Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we have a 4-game slate for the NBA. I'm not going to do game picks today because all of these teams are potentially, or at least some of these teams have already made trades, and then there's a few teams here that have made trades and have potential to make more trades today, or are going to make their first trade today. With the trade deadline looming at 3, there's not a whole lot that we know exactly, but we can only just wait and see. At least the trade deadline is well before a lock, so that it will at least give us plenty of time to deal with with the trade realities for the slate later. For the Denver Nuggets, Murray is questionable. For the Magic, Harris is questionable. Bamba and Okiki are out. For the Suns, Booker, Payne, and Shamet and Durant are out. For the Bulls, DeRozan is questionable and Javonte Green is out. For the Nets, Seth Curry is out. For the Bucks, Ingles and Portis are out. And for the Lakers, LeBron is questionable and Davis is probable. Lots of questions there. We don't really have answers for yet, but we'll have to wait and see, obviously. So there could be a lot of value that opens up throughout the day. We're going to start off, though, with Nick Claxton from Brooklyn. It looks like he and Dinwiddie are going to be the top two guys in Brooklyn now. We'll have to wait and see if Brooklyn makes more trades today. But I expect Claxton, who's played extremely well lately, he's had sub 40 fantasy point games the last 9 games. He should be pretty popular today with all the guys in transition, but I will say that Brooklyn Dinwiddie is going to likely start, so that should help that situation some. Nikola Jokic looks like he's just too cheap, actually. His price actually dropped. He's been a triple-double machine lately. He's been just dominating everybody and everywhere. Obviously, a little bit of a tougher matchup against Orlando, but I mean, tough matchups haven't really stopped him as of late, and the triple doubles have been, excuse me, on a path for a while. He needs 55 fantasy points, and he's been over that almost every single game for a while, with the exception, I think, one. So I look for him to be a great option on the slate. He's just too cheap. I can't believe an $11,000 player is too cheap. Then we're going to look at Drew Holiday, who also looks pretty cheap today, especially if the Bucks make some trades. But with Ingles out, that helps him a little bit, and Porter's out helps him a little bit. He's dropped in price, but he's in a really good spot here. He's been playing really well. He's got a nice plus matchup against the Lakers, who, I mean, I watched them play against Oklahoma City the other day, and I'm not sure that the Lakers actually know how to play basketball, but with that said, he is in a great spot. Should have some nice upside in this matchup, especially if Milwaukee ends up making some trades too. And then Giannis, obviously, now he's obviously a lot more expensive than even Jokic, but he's been playing really well lately. He's been over 70 fantasy points in 3 of the last 5 games. That's pretty crazy. I look for him to be an interesting option, especially with some of these cheap Phoenix Suns plays. I could see a roster where you could throw in Jokic and Giannis together, potentially, so we'll just have to wait and see. Then I'm going to mention Chris Middleton. Now, here's the thing about him. I actually kind of sort of think that the trade situations might play out where he ends up being able to start today. And if that were the case, then he would definitely be somebody I would consider to roster. We'll have to wait and see, but I do have a feeling that he might end up starting today. I mean, I'm not basing that off of anything, but I do think that he does have some potential to potentially start. And if he does, he would definitely be somebody I would consider on this situation. Then we're going to look at Dario Saric for the Phoenix Suns. Now, I'm going to mention the Phoenix Suns here as a team. I expect them to have 9-player roster today, assuming no other trades with them happen. And with that, most of them are going to play a lot of minutes, with the exception of maybe the bottom 1 or 2. But I look for at least Dario Saric, Chris Paul, DeAndre Ayton, and Torrey Craig to start, and then maybe Damian Lee or Saban Lee. We'll have to wait and see exactly who ends up starting. But from that perspective, I've picked out 4 guys for Phoenix I think are the best plays. But overall, you could kind of mix and match these guys to try to create different roster combinations. They're probably going to have a lot of upside as a result of their plus matchup against Atlanta as well. So, but we're going to start with Dario Saric. Saric has played pretty good as a starter this season, and I expect him to have some potential in this game due to him potentially starting. Though, do keep in mind Atlanta has some decent, not great, but decent inside presence here, so he could have a little bit of a rough go, but it's not like a hard game necessarily. Then we're going to look at Damian Lee. Now, I do think he ends up drawing the start, but you do want to make sure he does. But he's basically minimum priced, and so he's going to have a lot of upside if he draws the start today. Chris Paul, also very interesting. A little bit too cheap, in my opinion. Just underpriced for his potential here. Don't let the last game against Atlanta, where he only played 27 minutes and really didn't do much, scare you here. His price is too cheap. He's got some nice upside as a result. And again, there's lots of value probably going to open up on the slate, so it's going to be you're going to have to use some expensive guys. And then DeAndre Ayton. Now, I don't like him as much as I like Chris Paul, but he has got some upside at this price. He's played pretty solid lately. He's a little bit inconsistent at times, though, but there's only going to be two big-time players on the Suns today, with him and Chris Paul likely, so I expect both of them to have high usage. With that said, let's go over to FanDuel, and of course, we're going to see a lot of similar players here with the situation, and also just waiting on the teams to figure it out. But I'm going to start with Dario Saric. If he starts, he'll be somebody that's interesting on FanDuel. Obviously, the cheap guys are not quite as cheap on FanDuel as DraftKings. But we're going to look at Damian Lee as well. He also has some nice upside as a result of the trade situations, and if he starts, he would definitely be somebody I would consider here on FanDuel. Then we're going to look at Nicholas Claxton, who's played pretty well this season for the Nets, and he should have a lot of upside as a result of all the trades. He also has Dinwiddie now to run with him, as opposed to Kyrie and Durant, so we'll have to wait and see, obviously, how that plays, but I like him, and even though he's a little bit more expensive here on FanDuel than DraftKings, he is viable. Drew Holiday also looks really interesting. Seems a little bit too cheap for his potential here, though he has more upside on DraftKings than FanDuel. He still has some decent upside here, especially in a plus matchup against the Lakers. And then Chris Paul for Suns. Excuse me. He seems just a little bit too cheap for this situation, considering the fact they only have 8 or 9 players, and they got a nice plus matchup against Atlanta. And then Nikola Jokic finally for Denver. He just seems too cheap for his triple-double bonanza he's been going on. I expect that to continue. I expect him to have really nice upside here. Even though he doesn't get a ton of blocks and steals, he's likely going to get a triple-double like he's just been getting almost every game. And so keep him as a top-tier option on this slate. With that said, guys, thanks for liking, commenting, and subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. And have a nice day, guys.